One of my close friends, along with his close friend of many years, recently started a watch brand, and I had the opportunity to sit down with them at the Salt Lake City Masonic Temple to talk about their brand, Markwell, and specifically their inaugural model, the Memento Mori. Now, I want to make it clear that although this dial is geared toward Freemasons, Markwell itself is not a Masonic brand. It's not just for Masons. In fact, there will be multiple dials, multiple styles that are in production right now that will be coming out in the months ahead. So if a Masonic themed watch just doesn't pique your interest, that's okay. But please stick around and listen to this presentation and my conversation with John and Alan. We talk about some really interesting things, and the watch itself is exceptionally good. Now, in full transparency, John, one of the founders, is a close friend of mine, and I would love to see his brand succeed, but this is by no means a sponsored review. I'm not being paid. I've not been promised free product. So like all of my content, it will have no oversight. It will not be filtered. It will just be my opinion on this really solid watch, and then a discussion about what it's like starting a watch brand, what challenges are involved, how did you come to a design, how did you bring a watch to the market that hopefully has some meaning and value behind it, so it's not just another micro brand release. I think you'll really enjoy this conversation. And then again, the watch itself is very strong. In fact, this is probably the best or one of the top 3 watches that I've come across, sub $1,000 in terms of finish, in terms of detail work, in terms of value. And yes, the components are produced like all micro brands in some of the top facilities in Southeast Asia, but they're overseen by someone with decades of experience in the watch industry, specifically having worked a career with the Swatch Group. So the attention to detail, the quality, the execution is top level. And I asked John and Alan about this, and they had an interesting response.
The microbrand world, of course, there's a lot to it. I have to say, though, in the last couple of years with all the hype, with the high-end watches, with the legacy watches, those price ranges are sometimes just not attainable for people. Yeah. And I think the beauty of microbrands is that you can probably get the same quality of some of these, to some extent, let's call it 80% of it, for a fraction of the price. So I think there's a world within the microbrand community where someone that wants something that's nice and quality built can find it. And part of the reason Markwell watches was started, I wanted an everyday watch that was built to the same quality standards of other watches that are higher end, be quite honestly.
Much more expensive.
Much more expensive, yeah. I mean, our price range, this watch, is probably built in the same price ranges of watches that cost, 3 and 4 times more.
Quality. I mean, that's an important word that is thrown around a lot these days, but what does that mean for this Memento Mori? Well, the case is surprisingly hefty. It's surprising because the size is 37 millimeters. It has a retro-inspired design, but the finishing is really good. There's a good mix of high-polished elements and then differently orientated brush directions on this case and these eagle claw lugs. Note the concave-shaped case-integrated bezel. I think that's a nice detail. When you have this watch in hand, it becomes apparent that it's a top quality. It can compete with watches that cost far more than this one. Now, looking at the two, I'm partial to the gold tone, which might not be a surprise to some of you. I love the look of yellow gold, but this is not a PVD application to a stainless steel case. This is a DLC application, a diamond-like carbon coating. So it looks like yellow gold, but it's very strong. It's very scratch resistant. It will be difficult to mar or to mark. And likewise, the stainless steel variation has a hard clear coating that will minimize hairline wear marks that accumulate as you use your daily driver pieces.
This is something that you can strap on, put on your wrist that day, and run out, and it's going to last you the rest of your life, as long as you take care of it. But you can still give it a beating.
And something we've already found, because with the prototype watches that we had made, we've beat the hell out of them.
Yeah, we really have.
And I can't even scratch this one.
Now, the dial is a domed shape and there is very defined printing. And I think this is only really appreciated on the macro level under high levels of magnification because some of these elements, like the Holy Bible text, they're very clean, they're very crisp, and they're very small. Because from arm's length, when you gauge your wrist to tell the time, when you look at your watch, you might not see some of these smaller details. So I think the macro work on the dial is really good. Now, why start a watch brand? Do you have any horological inspiration behind doing so? And how did you go about the design process? John and Alan have some nice insight.
Yeah, I have a background in arts, but my job on a daily basis is finance, and I've been doing that for 30 years. So I've had this creative outlet where I wanted to start something and make something happen. So I started on a piece of paper with a pencil. That's how that concept started. It was an idea from an old watch that belonged to my grandfather, right? So that watch became just the start, just the tip, before that mountain grew. And that watch, as it was designed, I wanted it to be wearable. I wanted it to be rugged. I wanted it to be automatic. I wanted it to be switched because of quality. And the one thing I didn't want it to do, because we all know this happens with some micro brands, is that they literally take a catalog and they pick through and they go, okay, this case, this dial, stainless steel, make this in black, we'll use these hands.
And you didn't do
No, we didn't do that. Everything was designed. I mean, right from when they punch them out of the plugs to they CNC them to they work. The design, the way these eagle claw lugs work on our watch, it's 37 millimeters in diameter, but watch geeks know it's not always the diameter of the watch and how it fits on your wrist. From lug to lug, we're at 43, 43 and a half. And even with a box sapphire crystal, we're below 10 and a half millimeters.
Now, as a watch fan myself, I can definitely relate to that. A grandfather's watch as inspiration. And I like the fact that the end product is not a one-to-one or a clear homage to that original Bulova. It's been through a process, and I think that's evident. I think that's a positive thing, as is not just picking and choosing from a catalog, but having thought behind each element of the design. And I wondered if Markwell had more meaning to it, because the design process had layers and meaning to it. So I asked John, I asked Alan about the meaning behind Markwell, or is it just a fun name?
We're Freemasons, and within the Masonic fraternity, there's a lesson. It's called the Mark Mason, and it talks about how you have to make your mark on your stone each day as you're constructing the stones to build a castle or a temple or something like that. You got to make your mark in life, basically. So I took that concept because I thought for weeks and weeks, what am I going to call this thing? And I had all kinds of different names, and some of it was like my grandfather's name, some of it was something from my past or something historical, but I kind of just wanted something that I could riff off of. And I'm like, I just got to, I got to make my mark. Duh, mark well. So you want to do a job right, you want to make your mark in life, mark well. And that's where the name comes from, yeah. Trying to design a logo is harder than trying to design a watch case. And I will tell you that I did everything from M's and W's that ended up looking more like Volkswagen and everything else. And then you'd be like, okay, I think I've got it. And then you'd look online and someone else has got that. And you would think about it and write it more and more. And one night, probably watching one of your videos on YouTube, another one cycled through, and another YouTuber did a video on the history of time. And he talked about water clocks and sand clocks and the invention of the hairspring and everything that went through. And then the one thing that he talked about was atomic clocks, which became popular. And atomic clocks are powered by cesium, and it's the decay rate of the cesium. So I'm sitting there watching YouTube, dog snoring next to me on the couch. I go through on my phone and I look up cesium, and there's a geometric representation of cesium. And I looked at it and I go, you gotta be kidding. So we literally just took that geometric representation and turned it 180 degrees. And I go, boom, that's the logo for Markwell. Funny side note, we put that logo on our crown, and a lot of companies do that, as you know, they put their logo on the crown. Well, even though the watch is historically inspired with modern manufacturing, I took the logo and filled it with luminescent material on the crown. And my daughter brought it up, and she says, well, cesium's radioactive, right? That's why it glows in the dark. And I go, yeah, I'm going to go with that. That's Latin for remember thou art mortal. So that's the best part of a timepiece. The seconds are ticking away, man. Yeah. So remember that you're here for a reason. So if you turn the watch over, it's got a sapphire display case back, and it's not meant to be like found right away. Yeah, you might be looking at the glass going, no, what? And if you look—
That smudge isn't a smudge.
That smudge is not a smudge. If you get it just in the right light, whether you're outside or inside under a lamp, you should be able to see a skull and crossbones ghosted in there. And that goes back to the Memento Mori, remember thou art mortal. You'll see it on tombstones in old cemeteries in Europe, etc.
So making your mark in life, marking it well, and keeping in mind the idea that you have a finite amount of time on this world. I'm not a Freemason, but I definitely relate to the meaning behind that. I think it's great. And it kind of reminds me of other brands that have some thought to the name of the company, like Rolex. The intent was to just have that word roll off your tongue, to be easy to be spoken by people that speak multiple different languages. And I think that the brand was successful with that, but it doesn't have the hidden meaning or layers like a brand say Seiko, Seikosha. Seiko translates roughly to success or exquisiteness, and then Sha roughly translates to house. So when you say the name Seiko, you're basically saying a house of exquisiteness or success, and I think that is evident with many of the products that they've brought to the market over the decades. And that same meaning, that same layered nature of the thought process is evident with Markwell and with the Memento Mori. Now let's compare Markwell to other micro brands, specifically upstart brands. Many new brands, they have to go with a Kickstarter route or a pre-order method for funding the production of their product. And I know that that's a necessity in some instances where that brand just does not have the capital to invest up front. And I'm really glad that Markwell didn't go that route. Not just because I want instant gratification when I buy a product. I don't want to have to wait 3 months, 6 months, 8 months or more. And John and Alan felt similarly. In fact, I'll just share what they shared with me.
Well, the one thing I wanted to do was I myself have been on the other side of that Kickstarter deal. And you pay for something and you don't see it for a year, 9 months. I have one right now that I've been waiting for that was supposed to be ready in October, supposed to be ready at Christmas, supposed to be ready in January. It's still not here. Okay, I'm patient. But when people want to purchase something and have something, it's got to be there. Part of the deal working with Alan, my business partner here, is he has built a couple of successful businesses. And one of the concepts that he talked about and we shared was that if you're going to sell something, you probably should have that product and you should probably have it there.
Well, there's a couple of pieces to it. Number one, the only way to build a company, in my opinion, is build it organically. Let it grow organically. If you start too big, you're doomed to fail. If you start too small, say for instance, if something is just on pre-sale until there's enough money to actually go to the manufacturer and have it purchased, you've got no skin in the game. The way I look at it is if we're going to do something, okay, let's put some skin in the game. How much is it going to cost to have 50 watches made to this spec? How much is it going to cost to have 100 watches made at this spec? And pony up the money.
Skin in the game. That's something that I relate to, and I think a lot of you watching will appreciate that sentiment and that level of reputation, I think, that gives the brand when you self-fund up front and you're not reliant on crowdfunding to produce your product. Now, I also asked John and Alan about future plans, what other dials, what other styles they have in the works, and I'm excited to share with you what they said.
Sure. We met about a week and a half ago and marked out how the company's going to go for the rest of the year. We're going to take the Telford case that we've designed. We're going to give it different DLC coatings, so we know we can do gold. We'll have some things in black.
Different case backs.
Different case backs. We currently have a see-through case back. We're looking at possibly an oil-pressed. Yeah, so there'll be a relief image on the back of the case back. We're looking at different dial treatments, purposely maybe an entire luminescent dial with reverse printing. We have a date model coming through. I would call it a field type watch that we're working on. Well, when you've got the case built, it's a lot easier to put the parts in the middle. So we're going to try, hopefully by the end of the year, we have a GMT function. Whether that's Swiss or Japanese, we're not quite sure. The 9075 is pretty popular, so we're looking at that movement. So we're going to take that case in different iterations and work it out through the end of the year. And at that point, this 37 millimeter case, we're looking to possibly upsize it percentage-wise to about a 40. And from there, we're looking at making a diver's watch that's not going to look like all the rest of the diver's watches, but not look crazy at all. It's going to have that same concept. I think I've seen that somewhere before.
And it'll be based off the same Telford case, but sized up.
Like my grandfather was skinny when he was young.
37, it'll be a 40
up.
millimeter case.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
We're going to go from 37 to 40.
Yeah, 37, 40.
Now, I'd like to end with a couple things. What do I think about Markwell? What is my subjective opinion on the Memento Mori? I'll share that with you in closing. I like the meaning behind the brand name, the logo, and the model. I really enjoy this impressive case, the dial details, the 3-position regulated SW200. I think that's a positive choice. And the finishing, it really does compete with watches that cost far more than this one does. And this one's retail price is $969. Now, I'd like to see a bracelet option in the future. I know, that's something that I have a bias toward. I'm biased toward bracelets. So I asked John if he was planning on a bracelet in the future. And fortunately, he is looking into that. That's something that they're planning on and working toward. And I suggested a DLC gold bracelet to pair with a DLC gold Telford in the future. I think that's something that I would be most interested in, because my interest in this watch, it doesn't have anything to do with Freemasonry, because I'm not a Freemason, but I do enjoy the quality. I do enjoy the details. I do enjoy the execution of this watch. So I would be more interested in a model that has a standard dial and would have a bracelet. So I'm looking forward to seeing these upcoming dials that Markwell has in production right now, and hopefully a DLC gold bracelet or a hard clear coated bracelet for future releases. So yes, this is a brand, although I know the owner, I'm friends with the owner, I would absolutely wear in rotation because of the quality and the merit of the product itself. So let me know if you have any questions, or if you would like to see a follow-up conversation with John and Alan about something that maybe I didn't go into detail enough on in this video or didn't touch on entirely. Please place that below. I'll leave a link to Markwell in the description if you're interested in ordering this Memento Mori. And then lastly, I will leave you with a quote from John that I think perfectly brings this video to a close.
I have an artistic background. I paint, I draw, but for the last 30 years of my life, I've been in finance. I push papers, okay? And the satisfaction comes in getting paid, but there's really no satisfaction in pushing paper sometimes. You wanting to be able to go out and do something. So in chatting with my wife, she's like, just do it. And so I did what I always did. I took out a notebook and a pencil, and I sat down and I started sketching. I took that original watch from my grandfather. I took ideas from watches. I have a watch that is an old Hamilton watch that has a Masonic dial. I took some hints and pieces and parts, but that watch was a lot smaller. We wanted something with a modern size. And from where I started to where I ended up, traveling that road, it doesn't look anything like where I started, but the result is exactly where I think it should be.